Chapter 60. A terrible vision. Enlightenment. After such foolish infatuations, Lamech went into the temple, sat down next to the altar, and leaned with his back against it, his face turned towards the east. Because now he found no contentment at the altar any longer, since the radiant heart had disappeared from it as a result of his annoyance, leaving the altar standing empty. Lamech intended to keep this position until his end, but the nearing rise of an entirely different son, other than what Lamech expected, brought him back to himself. The sunrise had the following appearance. Instead of the expected sun, an immense, gigantic serpent pushed its head above the horizon, and as the head rose, it dragged behind itself an equally gigantic snake body. But this snake shone as bright as the sun. When this huge monster was already pretty high above the horizon, it was followed by a countless number of smaller snakes, which all together, similar to the main snake, wore strong luminous ray crowns on their heads. Soon the whole sky was covered with such snakes, which were curling in all directions around the main snake. These movements were becoming increasingly violent. A real battle was developing. The main snake bit the smaller ones, and the bitten fell to the ground, and where one fell to the ground, the earth soon ignited in a terrible fire. But the surface of the earth began to lament loudly because of such hardship, and the mountains bent furiously down into the valleys and rerouted the rivers, and from their fissures and crevices, masses and masses of clouds rose upwards and became denser and denser and started to darken the whole sky. And soon afterwards, indescribably mighty floods plunged down to earth and put all the land under water. And the water rose and rose, and soon engulfed the city of Hanoch, and was nearly reaching with terrible hitting waves the top of the mountain where Lamech was with his still sleeping people. But when the mountain began to waver, and the temple threatened to come down, and on top of it all, a huge lightning strike, followed by a powerful thunder, made the earth tremble. Also the suicidal Lamech began to become anxious. He stood up, pinched his eyes shut, rubbed them, and began to look around. He saw the temple in front of him, and in it the Lord and Enoch, and the people were sitting cheerfully around the temple, praising and extolling the glory of God. And he was safe and sound among his family members. And when he thus saw himself and everything in the good old order, he asked Tubal-Cain, standing next to him, "Son, my son, tell me, by the Lord's almighty will, what just happened to me? Where was I, and where were you, and the wise man, and Enoch, who are probably waiting there in the temple for me?" And Tubal-Cain replied to Lamech, "O Father Lamech, what are you asking me? Are you then out of your mind that you don't know these things? How you got here after being instructed by the wise man to proclaim to all the people that they should rise from the ground? See, you then hugged my and Naomi's mother and fell into a deep sleep in such sweet embracement, even before fulfilling the instructions of the wise man, and thus kept on sleeping for a considerable period of time. But I couldn't say for how long. See, that is all. If you do not believe me, there are still more witnesses who can confirm that everything is undeniably the case." When Lamech had heard this, he cried out loud and said, "God, to you the only holy, forever all Lord, all praise, all thanks, and all my love, that this was all just a vain dream. But how is it possible that I could oversleep the word of the Lord so quickly, and did not do what he asked me to do?" And Lamech from the heights, standing next to him, said, "See, brother, because you do not first fulfilled the Lord's will, but had secretly nurtured in you the thought to rest on this mountain, in the midst of your wives through the night. The Lord allowed it that you unconsciously succeeded to get to your wives during the time when you, in your nightly fantasy, thought to waken the people, but nobody paid any attention to your call, which you never carried out, since you walked out of the temple already blissfully asleep between your wives. Thus the flesh has deceived you before God, and God then allowed it to happen that you had to taste the fruit of love in the flesh. But let me guide you back into the temple, and the Lord will reveal to you some other foolishness in you, and thus follow me. Amen.